So if I said to you, I'm going to take away one of your electrical or automatic devices for a year. I think there was a turn off your TV week somewhere this year. And suppose I said I'm going to take one away from you. I wonder if you'd be able to survive. If I took away your cell phone, for example, some of us would be apoplectic. We'd be going crazy. Well, what about if you lived without technology for an entire year? That's exactly what a Silicon Valley family did out in California, out in a beautiful area, by the way, I've been to, Laguna Beach, California. The Kolberg family, living right there in the heart of the Silicon Valley, bravely gave up their technology addictions in an effort to reclaim quality family time. With us this morning is Sharael Kolberg, author of A Year Unplugged, and she joins us here on the Gary Sutton Show. Obviously, you're joining me this morning, so you're plugged back in a little bit, right, Sharael?
Yes, I am.
Is it Sharael or Sharael? I want to make sure I say that correctly.
Oh, I know. It's a tough one. It's actually Cheryl.
Cheryl. Okay, well, that makes it really easy. So, Cheryl, great to have you on the show. And obviously, I was fascinated when I saw this topic because, you know, for so many of us, we are addicted. I mean, it is just, and we become so unsocial in this country because of all the devices that we have that we don't even know how to have a conversation anymore sometimes. But you kind of went pretty radical on this, right?
Yeah, we did. We gave up our laptops, our email, our cell phone, television, internet, digital cameras, gave it all up.
How many people were in your family, Cheryl?
It's just myself, my husband, and my daughter, who was 5 years old at the time.
Okay. So how did it go? Were there any times where you kind of were moving to maybe go back and say, this is too much?
You know, it was interesting. It was definitely a very trying year, to say the least. But I think we saw the impact, the positive impact it had very quickly, that it made us realize that it was a worthwhile effort. Even though there were times that were difficult, we still wanted to continue with it.
So you don't have a phone, you don't have a TV, you don't have a laptop, you don't have your cell phone, you don't have all the stuff that we think about every day that is basically, you know, the tech stuff, right? I mean, you still had your lights turned on and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So you weren't totally off the grid, but I mean, you were off the information grid for the most part, right? You said it was very difficult at times. Tell me some of the difficulties that you had during that year.
Well, so basically, the only way we really had to communicate with people was from our home phone. So we just had our home phone. So that kind of made it hard to access us. So people that we thought we were friends with didn't want to go the extra effort to reach us, you know, because we'd have to be home to answer the phone, you know.
Wow.
So it wasn't really very easy to reach us. So we kind of found out who our friends were very quickly, as far as those who were willing to go the extra mile to really get in touch with us. Some people, they just don't want to be bothered. You know, it's too much of an effort.
Well, we're used to having people on the other end at a finger's touch and a moment's notice. And you know, the way you lived is kind of the way we used to live some time ago, where you weren't interrupted every 2 minutes. Or, you know, the only thing we complained about was that your daughter's only 5, would be on the phone with their boyfriend way too often. You got to limit the time. But yeah, you know, it's really interesting to me that you exposed a lot of things here. I think that we ought not be out there at every beck and call. We ought not have that phone there controlling our lives. Is that kind of one of the things you were going for?
Yeah. Well, I mean, our experience, I think, took us kind of back to the 80s. It kind of took us back to when, you know, I was a child, and it was fun to share that with my daughter and to show her that, you know, we had just as much fun when I was a kid without the internet, without video games, without Facebook and Instagram and all these things that now seem to be part of teenagers' lives and kids' lives. So, I mean, I got my record player out for my dad from his garage. We got our typewriter out. I mean, we had fun without technology. We kind of went old school, and it was fun sharing that childhood of mine with my daughter at the time. And then just, the accessibility, that we feel obligated to be readily accessible to everyone at a moment's notice, like you said. I just feel like without our technology, it was so much more calm and quiet and peaceful. And, you know, the thing is, when I had to make a phone call and I would make it from my home phone, I gave that person my undivided attention. I was talking with them on the phone, sitting at home in a quiet environment,
Sure.
instead of on my cell phone while I'm driving or standing in line at the market while flipping through a magazine. We're so distracted with our technology, and giving that up really brought some peace of mind and some quietness to our lives that was really wonderful.
You live in a beautiful place, Laguna Beach, California. I've been out there, and
yes.
One of the great things about driving down into Laguna Beach is you look up, you have houses that are perched up above you, high in the air. It's a beautiful place, right on the coast of the Pacific. But so I can see where you're going to have an awful lot around you of beauty and things to look at. I loved it when I was there. But one of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking, your daughter's 5 years old. This would have been an amazing experience if your daughter would have been, let's say, 14 or 15. Right.
Okay, so here's the thing. So I wrote the book, I journaled during our year, and it ended up being a book, when we lived in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is in the Bay Area, which is Northern California, and she's 5. So now we live in Southern California in Laguna Beach, and my daughter is 11.
Uh-huh.
So big difference. And I actually brought it to my family and said, hey, maybe we should do Unplugged, 2.0. Let's do it again. And my daughter, who's in middle school, was like, I will kill you if you take my cell phone away. So
you made my point. You made my point exactly. Yeah.
It's a little easier with younger kids, but I still believe strongly, and I would love to get this message across to teenagers, that those are the ones that need to unplug the most, because they will see the most direct benefit from taking a break from that constant need to be entertained by technology.
We're talking with Sharael Kolberg, the author of A Year Unplugged, A Family's Life Without Technology. Let me ask you a question here. Before you did the Year Unplugged, were you people who were pretty much dependent on that? And after you were done with the Year Unplugged, what have you done differently now in terms of dealing with technology, if anything at all?
So before we unplugged, a typical evening in our household would be, I would be on one end of the couch with my laptop open, checking my emails. My husband would be on the other end of the couch with his laptop open, catching up on Facebook, and our daughter would be sitting in between us watching something on the Disney Channel or a movie. And that was status quo, and we didn't think anything of it. We were perfectly happy, and a lot of our friends in Silicon Valley was the same way. That's how we just spent our evenings. Well, my daughter got a cold, and she was home from school for multiple days, and I was a part-time journalist at the time and housewife and mom and had things to get done. And so she said, can I watch TV? And I said, oh, sure, of course, So I tucked her in on the couch, and she turned on the TV at 9 a.m. Well, before I knew it, it was 6 o'clock at night, and she had been watching TV all day long. And that happened pretty much the whole week while she was home from school.
Wow.
And it just made me realize, gosh, how easy it is to give in to the allure of technology, and how I really had to stop and think that I didn't think I really wanted her exposed to that much TV. So my husband and I had a long talk about it and said, I think we need to cut back. And so obviously if you read the book, you'll see how and why. And we didn't just jump into it. We really put a lot of thought and pre-planning into pulling the plug. And then towards the end of the book, I talk about our move to Southern California. And I think one of the most interesting things was socially, it was embarrassing to say, oh, I don't have email. Who doesn't have email? So there was a lot of peer pressure, and it was embarrassing. So by the end of the year, everyone that we knew was used to us not having technology. So they were like, oh, there was an email that went out at school, and I know you don't have email, so let me tell you what it said. And so they kind of rallied around us. Well, then when we moved to a completely new place, I was like, I don't know if I want to go through that embarrassment again of, living unplugged. So I think if we would have stayed in the environment that we had started this year, unplugged, I think we would have been a lot less plugged in today. But our takeaway is just to really be more aware of your use of technology,
right?
Because we just get so caught up in it and wrapped up in it. And just know that you have choices. You don't have to answer your cell phone just because it's ringing. And you don't have to respond to that email right away. We have options.
Yeah, I do that myself. I have a smartphone sitting here in front of me, which has my whole life on, and my all the people I have to contact and all those different kind of things. So I have to have that. But It never goes on the golf course with me. Well, it does go on the golf course, but it goes on with the sound turned down because it also has on it a way I can measure yardage for holes. So I use it for that. But that's the only thing I use it for. In fact, the other day it rang. I forgot to turn the ringer off. And I never take it out, and I get annoyed with people who play golf and have their phones out there and are looking at it. And I said, I apologize profusely to the group I was with. I said, I'm really sorry about that. I never do that. And they all kind of went, well, you're a guy that doesn't. I don't take it in church. I don't take it into places when I'm making a speech or none of that stuff. And so I figure, you can catch me, leave a message. I'll get back to you, and when it's convenient, I'll do my very best to be expeditious on it. But, it comes back to the idea, and I think as you were finding there, that you couldn't get captured by this high-tech stuff. Let me bring in Palmer in Dallastown very quickly, a caller who's listening this morning and is enthralled. Palmer, you're on the Gary Sutton Show with Sharael Kolberg. Good morning, Palmer.
Good morning, Gary.
Great to have you.
When she said she lost some friends, she found out who her friends were. I was thinking back to the 50s and 60s when my mom and dad and my brother and sister and I, we would hop in the car and on Sunday afternoons go visit friends and people. And that became a regular Sunday thing. And I was wondering if she ended up doing any of that, going out and visiting friends.
Well, that's a great question, Palmer. Let's see what she says. Sharael?
Yeah, I think the friends that were willing to go the extra mile to make the effort to keep in touch with us, those friendships got even stronger because of this. And I actually, because I had so much free time on my hands without all this technology taking up all my time, I actually ended up getting into gardening. And that became a really fun social outlet for me and my friends. And I would have them over and we would plant this garden in my backyard. And then I would pick the produce and actually take it over to their houses. And we really definitely deepened those friendships.
So you're not a Grinch. You're not a person that's, you're out there kind of being anti-social. You sound like a very nice person, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I try.
Yeah, you're doing some cool stuff there. Now, did you find any prodigal return friends later on when they found out you were writing a book about this and all that kind of stuff? Did you have people coming back later on saying, hey, how you doing? Did you get any of that kind of I call it the prodigal son syndrome, but any of that kind of thing going on?
I'm sorry. So
I said, people. You said you found out who your friends are, and there are people who are saying, these people are off their rocker. What are they doing here? And they walk away from it. Now, all of a sudden, they find out, oh, she's writing a book. She's she's talking about that. Maybe we go back now and make friends again.
Well, I think that the people that we were living with that were in our lives during this experiment, I think they definitely appreciated what we were going through at the time and respected, our need to unplug. Right. And the ones that kind of fell to the wayside, no, I haven't really kept in touch with them, to be honest. Good. Yeah,
glad to hear that. So
yeah, you kind of find out, which friendships are the most meaningful to you, and that's fine. Some people are more acquaintances, and you just have to invest in the people that that's reciprocated with.
We're talking with Sharael Kolberg, author of A Year Unplugged, A Family's Life Without Technology. Imagine out there going through a year without your cell phone, your computer, your TV, the whole schmear. Yikes. Who making a lot of money this year? Psychologists and psychiatrists, because there'll be counseling going on everywhere. People say, I can't do it anymore. Did you find anybody in terms of your friends or your acquaintances who kind of picked up and went with you a little bit, who said, this is a pretty good idea she has here. When she explained to me why she's doing this, we're getting a little more social time, a little more face time with family and friends, and this might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, there's a couple instances in the book that I talk about where I don't think anyone I knew gave it up completely, but it definitely made people more aware, and there were times when my friends were like, yeah, let's just leave our cell phones at home. Even just that one thing, just putting your cell phone aside for a little while. It's interesting because it makes us better communicators. Like my husband and I, we didn't use our cell phones with each other. So when I left the house, I would be like, okay, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, and this is when I'm going to be back. Because we couldn't just communicate with each other throughout the day unless I was at home on the phone and he was at work on his phone. So you really definitely have to be better at communicating, especially like if you're meeting a friend and you're running late. You just have to say, well, they'll be here. And there was one time when I was waiting for a friend and waiting. I was getting really irritated that she didn't show up. And she ended up, she was in the hospital. So, I mean,
wow.
There's pros and cons. And she was fine, but still, here I was on one end going, oh, I'm so irritated at her. But then she had an emergency. So, I mean, definitely pros and cons to the use of technology. But again, it's just being aware and being respectful of others. And when you're with someone, enjoy that time with them face to face. Don't answer your cell phone.
I love this conversation. I got to tell you, Cheryl, because we have a situation right now in our country. We have the collision of a whole lot of generations, and the baby boomer generation, of which I happen to be a member, can remember a time where you didn't have cell phones. And we stop, and I hear people say, how did we get by? You didn't have someone calling you 24/7 or emailing you, or you didn't have the instantaneous communication. We didn't have Facebook telling us that we were going upstairs, we're coming downstairs, we're eating our breakfast, we're walking out the door. We didn't have all that wonderful knowledge. So how do we make it? And so you can compare. For kids right now, like your 11-year-old, now she can compare because she went through this situation, but they don't know what a world without all this instantaneous kind of communication is like.
That's right. Well, it's funny because there's an instance. I was having a conversation with my daughter when she was 5 in the book, and she says, "Mommy, was there a time when there were no TVs?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And then she said, "Well, was there a time when there were no movies?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And then she says, "Was there a time when there were no ballerinas?" It's like she has no frame of reference. And another thing that we went through is we listened to a lot of radio because we didn't have our TV. So radio was kind of our entertainment. We didn't have our iPods. We didn't have our iTunes.
Right.
And I can remember this one time when my husband was wanting to watch the Lakers playoffs. And he was like, oh, I can listen to it on the radio. We don't have a TV, but he was able to tune into the AM station that he could find to listen to the Lakers game. And we couldn't get it on the radio in our house, but we could get it on the radio in our car. So he and I were sitting out in our driveway at night listening to the Lakers game on the radio. And it was so much fun. I mean, just using your imagination to envision what was happening. I can imagine that way back when, that's how it was.
Kind of like going to the drive-ins for sound, right?
Totally.
There you go. We're going to take a break. I want to come right back. Sharael Kolberg is with us. Fascinating discussion. A Year Unplugged, a family's life without technology. And one of the questions I'm going to ask Cheryl when we come back is, does she ever threaten her 11-year-old with, hey, we might go back there again if you don't get off that, device right now? I wonder. You have any questions for Cheryl? Give us a call, 1-800-357-0910. Can you imagine going through a year without all the instant communication that we have? Today we say we couldn't do it. But there was a time when we made it quite handily. Thank you very much. We'll be right back on the Gary Sutton Show with Sharael Kolberg here on WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show. The name of the book is A Year Unplugged. It was written by Sharael Kolberg, and it's called A Year Unplugged, A Family's Life Without Technology. Where can you get this book?
You can get it online at www.ayearunplugged.com, and it's available in paperback, Kindle, Nook, and soon-to-be iPad.
Great read. I would think this is a fascinating read. Now, I want to ask you a question. I was going to break with this. So you got an 11-year-old now, and she already threatened that she would, she'd kill you if you went back to it. But I've got to think, having been a parent myself, that you got to be able to say, you know what, honey, if you don't get off that, we might go back and do it again. And then you hear that, no.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had that moment a couple times?
Well, I will say when she was 5, she did complain. 365 days, up until 364 days, she was still complaining about not having the TV. So
wow.
It's never easy. But I think right now with the teenagers, the biggest thing to me is the social media.
Yes.
The television isn't as much as they get older, at least in our situation, because they have homework and after-school activities, and it's not as much of a draw, I think, as it is with the younger kids. But the social media is really something that I think as a parent, we need to be involved with, and we need to monitor, and we need to limit as we can. The the bullying has changed with this new, generation, and it's now they're using like Instagram to say, well, oh yeah, we're not doing anything this weekend. The group, girls will say to each other, we're not doing anything this weekend. And then they'll go and post a picture how really they were all doing something this weekend and left someone out. So it's really changed the face of interaction and communication with the kids. But our take on it, having lived without our technology and now having maybe a slightly different focus on it, is to really just communicate openly with our daughter and to monitor everything that she does online. A lot of parents say, oh, my kid's so good, I'm sure they'll be fine, and they trust their child, and that's great, but they're still kids. So she knows that, our daughter knows that we check everything she posts, we check everything that is posted to her, and that we leave that communication open. If she sees something that she isn't sure about, then she'll come to us, and we just make sure that we talk about things. So, what's really interesting to me today, Cheryl, is if I go out to a restaurant or if I go out to a function where there's families and kids and stuff around, or if I go by a car every now and then, if I pass a car, we're afraid of empty moments, that we seem like we have to fill them with a movie. You see all these cars with movies going on and kids walking around with these movies. It's like, for God's sake, you can't sit and talk to them for a few moments. I mean, I see people sit down at dinners and everybody in the family's got their cell phone out, or their kids are walking in with the obligatory looking, the only thing you ever see them is their top of their head because their head's down, walking along like a Pac-Man, bumping into things as they try to watch it. It's gotten dangerous out there, but more importantly, socially, it's become a real tough shoal to navigate. Yes. Well, it's interesting because when we go on road trips and, first thing my daughter wants to do is watch a movie on Netflix on her iPad or something like that. And we say, you know what? No, you can do a little bit of that, but say we're driving to Utah or something, we will have been to Utah and back, and you will never have looked out the window once. And when you get older, you're going to be like, oh, I don't think I've been to Utah, because you didn't see anything about the scenery or anything we passed along the way. And that's how most kids these days are growing up. I mean, we put them in front of the TV when they wake up. They get into the minivan and they turn the movie on in the back of the car. And then they, go for a walk or something, and they listen to their iPod, and then they come home and turn the TV back on. It's just this constant stream of entertainment. And I know that for my daughter, one of the things that was the most positive benefit of not having technology was that it really made her more independent and more creative. She had to find different ways to entertain herself and more patient. So it can't be good for us on so many levels to just have that constant need to feel entertained. Yeah, absolutely. But it does take practice to get to the point where you are comfortable just sitting in a quiet setting. And unfortunately, I have to unplug our conversation right now, but it's Sharael Kolberg, Kolberg, A Year Unplugged, A Family's Life Without Technology. One more time, that website, Cheryl? www.ayearunplugged.com. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. Fabulous conversation, and I wish you the best of luck in the future. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Cheryl. Take care. Okay, bye.